Exactly. And exactly. Don't let people get into your head because this is an industry that is, I'll just say it with love, catty and gossipy and, and it is what it is. But at the end of the day, you know what? Your clients love you. That's all you need. Because, like you said, they're not paying your bills. The client is.
I'm Becca Poutney, wedding business marketing expert, speaker, and blogger, and you're listening to the Wedding Pros Who Are Ready to Grow podcast. I'm here to share with you actionable tips, strategies, and real-life examples to help you take your wedding business to the next level. If you are an ambitious wedding business owner that wants to take your passion and use it to build a profitable, sustainable business doing what you love, then you're in the right place. Let's get going with today's episode. Today, I'm chatting with Fausto Pifferrer, co-founder of Blue Elephant Events and Catering and co-owner of Wait a minute, let me say that again. Let me check this is still true, actually, before I say it. Are you still the co-owner of Real Main Wedding Magazine?
I am.
Right, I'll start that all again. Today, I'm chatting with Fausto Pifferrer, co-founder of Blue Elephant Events and Catering and co-owner of Real Main Weddings magazine. With over 40 years experience in catering and having met him in person at this year's Wedding MBA, he seemed the perfect fit to be the first ever caterer to be interviewed on my podcast. I cannot wait to find out more about him and his story. Fausto, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. And good afternoon to you and good morning to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Once again, I'm talking to someone on the other side of the world. And so we're all on different time zones. And I cannot believe I'm over 200 episodes into my podcast and I've never had anyone from catering appear as a guest. So you are the first one. You are the representative of the catering world today. So before we get into catering, let's go back a little bit and find out more about your history. So have you always worked in wedding and events, or did you have what I call a previous career before you entered this wild world?
40 years, August of 2025, I celebrated my 40th year. And I dropped out of high school, and I don't advocate that, but I'm going to be 60 soon. So these two women actually gave me my start to my career. And for them, I will be forever grateful because I started in Philadelphia and there's not a historic mansion or museum that we never touched. It was just a great experience. And from there, I went into planning and then had the catering company as well. And then we moved to Maine about 19 years ago and opened in this state.
Wow. Okay. So let's go back to 20-year-old you then. So did you get a job working for someone else's business? How did you land up working for them? What were you actually doing when you got started?
You're going to love this. I came back from London actually in 86 and had this epiphany because I was working with food my whole career. And I said, I can do catering. And that's what I was going to do. And this wonderful woman gave me a shot at doing her wedding. And I will be ever grateful to her as well, because it was paper products and disposables in the bottom of a church basement. But that was the start of my career, if I look back at it. And then when I went to work for these two women, I do this impressive wedding for them, and the girl's wearing a Vera Wang haute couture dress, which is Vera Wang prior to Kohl's. I always say that because I think it's funny. But you see the difference. There was no difference because both trusted me to do their event. And that's what I really love about my career and how I started. And I didn't know what I was doing when I was that age, 16 and 17, working in the food industry, and then thinking I could be a caterer and event planner was interesting to me.
Well, I'm always very impressed by catering because I am known as an absolute terrible cook. It is definitely not in my genes. I am not good at catering, but I really am good at eating other people's food that they make, on the other hand. So yeah, I love that you had that ambition. I love that you were just like, I'm just going to do this. I'm not going to let anything hold me back. So you worked for these ladies. At what point then in the last 40 years did you decide to go it alone?
It was 1999, and I decided to branch out on my own. And even though it was a mistake at that time, I look at everything as a learning experience. I just got in business with the wrong people, and the mistakes happen, and everything is a learning journey. And I did it myself. And when I realized that how much money I could make myself, I made them a lot of money, and they traveled the world, and I couldn't keep my electric on. So that was the decision for me to go out on my own. And since then, I never looked back. Everything is sort of a card that's held in your life. And that card was finished, and I had to move on to the next part of my life. And it was making money for myself and the team that I put together.
Amazing. And although it's a long time ago, do you remember that feeling of going out on your own? Because I know a lot of people listening to this podcast are maybe on the cusp of doing that. Maybe they're working for someone else. Maybe they have another job on the side and they want to go full time in their wedding business, but they're a little bit scared of letting go and doing it. Do you remember that feeling, or were you pushed rather than jumped?
No, I was actually petrified. I thought I would be blacklisted in Philadelphia, that no venue would put me in because of the longevity I had with these two women. And I was so shocked at all the venues allowing me to come in with my new company that they actually took other companies off to put me on because of the way I treated their venues and how I treated them in my career. And that was just amazing to me, because I was so scared that I would not have that power over venues to come in because they would blacklist me, but they did not.
Well,
that was an eye-opener.
Must have had some good relationships with them. As I always say, people buy from people. I know we're going to talk about that a little bit more later, but actually, you already had that relationship and that helped you kind of take that step and get through the door. So when you started out, was it just you? Did you immediately hire a team? How did it all happen?
I actually brought some of the people, and I did give my word to the two women that when I left, that I would not touch their company or their clients for 1 year. And I honored that. So I didn't touch any clients, but staff actually followed me. And one of the longest staff people that have worked for me is 33 years. We worked together, and then she worked for me. She finally retired, and we've been together 33 years.
Wow. And that's impressive.
So they followed me, and I put the team together. We worked well, and we took this company that we bought that was doing corporate, and corporate was really big for them, but I'm more wedding related, and we turned the wedding bigger than the corporate.
And you mentioned as well a little bit earlier, planning. So are you wedding planning and catering? How does that work together? Like, is it two separate businesses? Just get me up to speed on that side of things.
So when we opened the company here in Maine, we're Blue Elephant Events and Catering. So we're a planning company first with the catering attached to it, which actually makes a lot of sense, because I always feel that planners really should know the back end of catering, because it is the backbone of that event. You can plan all day long, but if the food does not come out on time or the caterer does not show up, you're left with just a pretty room and pizza being delivered. So I always say that you should work hand in hand with a caterer, because they are your army, because we're the ones who bring the most staff in to do all the work. And so planning is my passion. And then the catering, we have full catering team for that. And so we work hand in hand. So I have full-time planners that work for us full-time.
Wow. Yeah. And you're right. It is such an important part of the day. Just this week, actually, I was running a training day with a wedding venue here in the UK. And I had a training day for 15 people that the venue had booked me for. And they'd actually, as part of that 15, invited 3 of their external caterers to come in and join the training day, because exactly as you said, they're such a crucial part of the day. Yeah. And the conversation we were having is actually on a wedding day at this venue, there's probably only 2 people in the room that understand that the caterer and the venue are a different business. Everyone else in that room who's just sat there eating thinks that it's the same thing. And so if the food's not good, if the service is not good, if the experience is not good, who gets the blame? 9 times out of 10, it's the venue. And the same with the planner situation. Like, it's all interconnected.
I think that sometimes we forget that we're just this team within this event for this couple. And instead of jockeying for position, we should all jockey to make sure it's the best event that we can create for that, because you're only as good as your last event. So it doesn't matter, because by that Saturday end, you're already on the next event. And so I always say work together and create a team that works together. And that's why I like to be the planner, so I can bring everybody in that I trust to put on the best event.
So in terms of your business today then, so as we sit here in 2026, what does it look like? Like, do you have a lot of people working for you? How many events are you doing a year? Give us a picture of what's going on right now.
I have 10 full-time employees, which sometimes really scares me at night because payroll comes every 2 weeks. And I have 125 that are on the books. And I consider them employees because in the state of Maine, everybody is taxed. So you can't have a 1099 subcontractor. So they are technically all my employees.
Wow. So you've got a huge team that you've built. And then in terms of events, like how many events are you doing a year?
We do about 125 weddings a year plus corporate in between Monday through Thursday.
So it's fairly busy then in your life.
Yeah. We just did. I thought we were going to have a slow January, and we wound up doing 4 big events, and we have our first wedding coming up February 5th, 6th, February 6th.
Well, it never stops. It never stops. Okay, so looking back over that career, which is incredible, I love hearing about it. I think it's important that people understand the background before they start taking advice from you. But when you look back, I know you mentioned one little mistake, or maybe not so little, around how long you stayed working for someone else. But are there other things when you look back across your journey and you see mistakes that you made that other people could learn from?
I think it's not trusting in yourself and believing in yourself. I believed enough in myself to make somebody else all of this money, but I didn't believe in myself to make it for myself. And that was an eye opener for me, because when I realized that my financial freedom grew, and I'm certainly not wealthy, but I'm very comfortable. And I took the risk moving to Maine 19 years ago and opened during 2008 was wonderful and money was flowing. 2009, 10, and 11 was the recession. And my entire body sunk because I moved to Maine with a newborn baby because my partner and I adopted our daughter. And that's why we moved to Maine, because we adopted her in the Philadelphia area. And we wanted a little distance from her adopted state. And I just said, you got to just keep moving on. And I used all of my retirement money and made sure that the company could be sustainable, and eventually got it all back. And I just basically borrowed it from myself. So there are days that you were fearful, but you just keep going.
Yeah, and moving state to state is a big deal. Again, there's people listening to this that I know are considering even just moving to a different part of the UK. And it's scary because actually a lot of wedding business and networking is locally based.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you kind of pick up and drop yourself in Maine? What did you do to rebuild those connections? Did you already have those connections? Were you having to travel back a lot? How did that work practically?
I researched the entire area, and in 2008, Maine wasn't as developed as it is today. So I had a leg up, and there weren't venues per se. There was maybe a handful of them. So I immediately started working up in the Camden area, which is about north of where we live. And I got 2 exclusives up there. And then I got an exclusive in Portland, which is like the heart of the city. And so my exclusives were building us up, because I was always taught, go after the exclusive, you'll always have work. And then I started working with other venues that were starting to develop and started creating their programs for them. And from there, in 2013, Maine really developed. I'll tell you how undeveloped it was. There were no rental companies that had Chiavari chairs. And so there was only one company. I think they had about 150 of them. So I actually had to buy my own for a venue we took over.
Wow.
And so it was that. And then 2011, 2011, 2012, that was still the end of the recession. And around 2012, 13, and 14, Maine exploded. And today there's about 89 venues in the state of Maine, and our footprint is on a large chunk of them.
Wow. So you've seen a lot of change in that time. And I'm guessing no regrets about moving to that state.
No, it's got overdeveloped, and there are a lot more of us. And so it's really, now it's very competitive.
Okay, so you got to keep yourself ahead of the game. Now, as I mentioned in the intro, we met at Wedding MBA. You guys came along to my drinks reception that I hosted on the kind of opening night of Wedding MBA, and you were there as a speaker. So I'm guessing you have a bit of an understanding outside of just your own business about the catering business in general. So I'd love to hear from you. What are some of common mistakes you see caterers making and you think, why are they doing that? They need to do it different.
I think number one, understaffing your event. Understaffing your event is a terrible way to do business. An overstaffed party is a good party. Charge your client, bottom line. And then also treat your clients, or treat your staff with respect. Because here's the thing, you're asking that staff person that works for you part-time or per diem, or however, to take their Saturday off. Okay, so now they have to drive to the location. They have to pay tolls. They have to pay parking. And you're only going to give them 5 hours. And if they're paying taxes, that's not a lot of money at the end of the day. Give them 16 hours, pay them throughout the entire day. Even if they're on break, let it go. You're charging your client. You will keep your staff. I have had the same staff working for me for a very long time, and it's because of how I treat them. I don't micromanage them. They all know what to do. And the letters of references that we get back from clients speak volumes because they speak really well about our company, but I own the company. That I hope to expect. But when they talk about the staff, I can't do it without them.
Yeah, it's so true. And actually, kind of what I was saying earlier about the caterer and the venue relationship, actually, your staff are representing you. And if you have
Correct.
poor staff, staff that are miserable, staff that are unhappy, staff that don't show up because they're sick, because they can't be bothered to get out of bed, actually, your whole company falls apart. And so, your point is, don't do that, but also charge the client. Don't go hungry yourself to make your staff have those benefits. Make sure you cost it into the overall picture. Is that right?
Absolutely. And if you can, and if your state allows you to put gratuity on, put it on and, charge it, give it to the staff. It's just extra income for them and they will appreciate you even more.
Yeah, I love that. Look after your staff, look after your team, give them nice things and they will stay because a good team member is worth its weight in gold. And I know that myself as well. And whenever I have someone on the podcast who is still actively working in the industry, sometimes obviously people are just in education, but you're still very much active in the industry. Mm-hmm. I love to hear from them what they think is working for them in terms of marketing, in terms of getting business right here, right now. So not things that worked 5 years ago, but as you look at your books in 2026, as you look at where your income is coming from, where your events are being booked from, what do you see as working for your business right now?
For me, the number one thing is your venue relation. You will always have work if you treat the venue with respect. So to me, the client is actually the venue, not the person renting the space. The person who rented the space rented it for 5 hours. I have done my job. I am now left cleaning that venue and ensuring that it is in tip-top shape when we walk out the door. So that has been my number one marketing tool. I learned that 40 years ago. You treat the venue with respect, you will always have work.
The word of mouth, basically, because you're getting in with the venue's then referring you on.
Every lead that we get is venue driven. And then on top of that, the venue itself, some of them don't have the power to say who, because they have a list, but they will point to my name.
Yes. So. I love teaching that actually, because I often say to people, just because you're on a list doesn't mean you're being recommended. That is, exactly. and vice versa, because ultimately the person who's giving the tour will say what they think, even if you're not on the list. So yeah, relationship building is key. And
exactly.
I know we're going to come on to that in a little while because I want to talk to you more in depth about that. But if there are people listening and maybe they're catering, maybe they're planners, maybe they're photographers, but they still want to build relationships with the venues and they're coming in and they're newer to the market. Sometimes it can feel difficult because you feel like everyone's already got their established people. Mm-hmm. So they look at the venues and they think, well, they're never going to talk to me because they already have XYZ people on their list. Have you got any tips on how people can think differently or break into it, or things that you've done in the past to build those relationships?
If I were new and I was going after a venue that's brand new and I wanted to be on their list, what I would do, and this is an old story, everybody does this, a style shoot, but do it with a twist. You're going to do a style shoot, but it's not just to playtime. You're going to do the style shoot that, number one, is going to get published, whether it's on a blog, it's on Style Me Pretty, or in a magazine. You're going to have that already secured. Number two, you're going to turn it into a networking event for all of your peers and maybe open it up to couples. That way you become the host of that venue without actually being on the list yet. And if you have the power, do it on a Thursday. So by Friday, you can sort of tweak it and Saturday, sell it off as a wedding. You'll make money. We did it.
Nice. Tell me more about that. When you're saying sell it off as a wedding, tell me what you did.
So what we did was we had a style shoot on a Thursday at this new venue, had the tent company, everything, set it up for 72 people and did a micro wedding and offered it to people and said, hey, we have a wedding. It is completely set up. You have to use the same caterer, the same bar, the florist, all of this. You cannot change one single thing, $20,000. And so all the vendors made some money because it was already up and they weren't tearing it down until Monday. So we made some extra cash and we did a wedding and got extra pictures.
I love that. That is such a good idea. And why not shoot a shot? You already put all the effort into putting everything up. You might as well see if someone wants to take it. And probably they were happy because they were probably looking for an affordable option to get married, and they ended up with a lovely thing for a good price.
And the venue got a wedding that it did not have already because it was a new spot.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think is, on the other hand, is the number one thing that gets people removed from venue lists, or maybe makes a caterer go out of favor with a venue? What mistakes do you think lead to that?
Disrespect of the venue has placed maybe a planner within their company or a day of person, and then somebody comes in and like, that's not really a day of planner, that's just somebody who works here, that person doesn't know. Well, the reality of it is they're watching you, and the more disrespect you do to a venue, that's how they'll take you off the list. If they tell you don't roll the tables on our parquet floors, don't roll them. Don't lean them against a scagliola wall. Or, I like a lot of historic buildings. That's what I love working in. And so I have always been really in tune with protecting the property above all. So one of the things that we do is we photograph in and we photograph out. I will pay for any damage I might have done, but I will not pay for somebody else's damage. So you photograph before you set up. You have a clear record of what it looked like, and you have a clear record of what it looked like at the end when you left.
That's great.
Venues love that about us.
And what about the kitchen and how you leave that? Because I've heard some horror stories about caterers leaving kitchens in all sorts of states.
Well, a lot of our venues here don't have kitchens, so we have to build them all through tents. And the ones that we do operate, I do the same thing. We photograph before we even bring one single thing into the kitchen so that I know what our chefs did, and we have to photograph the sinks and everything. And there's also a cleaning team that stays behind to make sure that the floor is mopped, swept, and all the trash is taken out. So whatever their policy is, we follow it. And then they have to sign us out. So if they sign us out saying everything was perfect, don't call me on Monday, because I would have stayed till 1 fixing it. But if you call me on Monday, they know this policy about me. I'm pretty straightforward about it. So,
yeah. But so much of it does come down to respect. And I think as professionals, sometimes we can get complacent in those relationships. Sometimes, we're getting a lot of work from a venue, and then we just expect it. And we forget, wait a minute, no, they are actually the holders of the power to remove us from there. And it won't take much for them to bring someone else. Someone else is always up and coming, new, fresh ideas. And so, like we were joking about earlier, you got to stay on top of your game, because otherwise someone's going to take that spot from you.
Well, like I say all the time, especially when I'm speaking at conferences, the top of the pyramid is never going to change. It will always be the venue. And then the next thing that they go after is wedding dresses. And I just talked about this. And everybody's like, oh, the planner I said, the planner does not all the time bring somebody to a venue. Maybe a hotel, yes, or a venue that's tented. But to a venue that has a list of planners, a list of caterers, DJs, and so on, that venue is the driving ship. And it is sending you everything. And for reference for everybody, if you don't think that they're tracking how much work they send you, they do, because we do. We track every single dime I make every preferred professional I work with. I call them preferred professionals because I hate the term vendor.
Well, in the UK, it's even worse because we call it supplier, and I don't like that either. I prefer vendor to supplier, but I like your preferred professional. Maybe we'll start adopting that here as well.
It's just much nicer. I think vendor sounds like you're selling a hot dog.
That's so true. But I think because we don't use the word vendor in the UK, actually it sounds like kind of fancy when we say it.
Oh, nice. I like that.
So we don't think of a hot dog seller. We think it's something pretty trendy and cool, being a vendor. Okay, Fausto, one thing I learned about you very recently is that you've written a book. And as someone who has also written a book, I can appreciate the amount of time, effort, love, and struggle that can go into writing a book. So just tell me, why did you decide to write a book? And then tell us a bit more about what it's about.
I think for me, it was leaving a little bit of legacy for my daughter, of who I was, how I started. So the first book, it's a series of 3, and then the last one is an exit strategy out. And I just wanted to put it pen to paper before I forget too, things like that. Both my parents died of dementia, so I'm always fearful of that stuff. So I wanted to write it all down. And it's a journey to look back. And I put tidbits in there and that will help people. Not everything anybody teaches is going to work for everybody, but you could pick something up that could work for you in your area. And it was interesting to write it, interesting to put it together. And when I came up with the name, is Temporary Friend, is because everyone becomes a temporary friend within the industry and your client. And that's the truth. At the end of the day, it would be impossible to be friends with everyone you come in contact with in a networking group or meeting or whatever. As much as I would love that, I did the calculations. I have fed 1,795,000 people in my career. I wish I would have asked each one of them for $1.
Yeah.
But the reality of it is, temporary friend fit the best, because I do feel that clients come into your life, they're temporary, and then they sort of kind of just they're like a season. They just go.
So
And as
true.
much as I love them, I can't. By Saturday night at 11 o'clock, I'm on to the next week.
And so if I was to pick up a copy of Temporary Friend, and I love the name of it, by the way, because it's so descriptive of how often so many of us feel in this industry with having to find new clients and new relationships all the time. If I was to pick up a copy of the book right now, what's it going to help me with? What's it going to teach me? What's it going to tell me?
I did timelines in there, which I think are super important, creating a timeline that actually moves for the client, not the vendors or preferred professionals. And then I also put tidbits in there that for your contract, such as that if a client tells you 200 people and then come back and say, oh, there's only 100 people, but you quoted it at 200, you have lost 100 people financially. So there is a formula in there to get paid for the 100 people that aren't coming. It's not going to break their bank, but you will get paid because they changed it. So I tell my clients all the time, if you don't think you're going to have 200, don't tell me 200. Give me 120 and let me be surprised that you're at 200 because that's more money. The higher the number you give a caterer, the better they can buy. The lower the number, the more expensive things get. So I explained that. And then things like Quantum Meroot, we are allowed to use in certain states. Quantum Meroot allows you to be paid for time you have worked. So if a client decides that they don't want to hire you, you can actually bill for your time. So you actually have to know what your worth is hourly. I feel I am $250 an hour that I can get back for every hour. So I also show how to track everything, including the minute you call me, I jot down the date, the time it starts the conversation. And I'm a paper trail person because you can fudge emails, you can fudge writing things, but you can't fudge writing. And that's what'll work in a court of law. So I always put like 9 o'clock and then it ended at 10. I do a recap, send it to the client, they have it. So there's always work documented. So in the event they cancel, I get paid. And I show all of those things within the book.
And so do you think your book is perfect for people in catering? Is it relevant to people in other aspects of the industry as well?
I think it works for everybody because it just shows a little bit of everything because I talk about planning and DJ and venue relationships and all of that stuff. So it does work. It's an easy read. I did it the way I like to read things. So everything I ever do, I do the way I would like to see it for me. Not personally. I'm not a fan of like 175 pages. I get distracted too easily. So,
and there's pictures in it, isn't there? I think.
There is. I put pictures through the career, and then we had started a cafe when we first moved to Maine to get people to know us. And when we finally moved out of there, it was sort of surreal and sad. And that's where my daughter was in a playpen. Every day we went into work because we didn't have anybody. And I didn't have a nanny at the time because we couldn't afford it. And we didn't know anybody. So she sat at the front in a register in a playpen, and she slept from 12 o'clock to about 1:30. She would just lay there, and people were fascinated that she was so quiet. They thought she was a doll. And the sadness came from that of just shutting it down, and not because it didn't work. It was because it was never going to be part of the history of Blue Elephant Catering. It was only a stepping stone because I couldn't move to a new state and say, oh, pick me. I was one of Philadelphia's top 5 caterers. No, you leave your past behind and you start all new. And so the pictures are in there. They're sentimental. They're pictures of Sophia when she was little. And then as an adult, we recreated 4 major photos that we took there. And then we moved forward through some event photos and storytelling throughout the whole thing. And then the next one's really going to be geared to planning and timelines, and why the power of a timeline is so important, and to create the timeline to, like I said, to work for the client, not the people that are working the event.
So you're creating some more books, because I know how hard it was to write my book, and writing more than one book is even harder. So what's the timeline in terms of you bringing out these other books into the collection?
So the next one will come out next year, and then the final one will be 27. And hopefully, I'm not saying I'm retiring. I'm just saying eventually I'm going to have to come down because let's just face it, this new world we live in, everybody is getting younger and younger, and ageism is real. And, I paint my nails to keep up with trends.
I love that. But you've got so much experience, so much wisdom to share. And I love that you're putting it down in a book format. Is it available on
Thank you.
Amazon? Where can I link to it?
It is. It's available on Amazon. Actually anywhere you just type it in and it pops up. They actually have it everywhere, which is really nice. And then when I do conferences, I sometimes companies will sponsor me and they'll sponsor the book, and then I hand them out to people that are attending the conference or the session.
Oh, I love that so much. So your book is Temporary Friends. We've also talked about the importance of relationship building with venues. So we've kind of got these two things going on where we know that people are only in our lives for a bit, but we also know that these relationships are incredibly important. Why do you think people don't put enough value on building relationships?
There are two sets of professional people that are working in our industry, and some are the ones that are in it full speed, and the one that do it because it's a hustle of an extra cash. And you can tell who puts in the effort and who doesn't. And I'm not putting either one down. That's not what I'm saying. I'm in the phone doesn't ring. We don't get a check. My staff doesn't get a check. If you're doing this as a hobby, you have to take a step back and understand why sometimes professionals say, oh, they're just a hobbyist or somebody who's doing this because they still have a full-time job, so they still have benefits. Their spouse or partner is making six figures. There's a whole different... If Ruben and I don't go into work, there are 8 other people relying on us, and I pay very well. I sometimes get shocked when I look at the tax forms. I'm like, oh, wow. And it is a scary thing. And I think that's the difference, because I put 100% into the relationships that I have to network and nurture to keep the business alive. While somebody else might, oh, I don't feel like networking, or I don't feel like networking every day. Your mouth gets dry of chatting and talking about the same stuff over and over again. And the reality of it is we're not really inventing anything new, and this is no dig. We recycle, and what was old is new again, and what was new gets old. And I try to explain that if you jump into this, jump into it, because you will have a wonderful career. There'll be ups and downs. You won't always make the money. You'll probably have to put money into your business. You'll probably take it out, take it in, but you work for yourself. And there's something to be said about not having to answer to anybody.
Yeah. And we become very unemployable, don't we? Because once you own your own business, suddenly it's really hard to ever say, can I take a day off? Because I'm like, who has to ask for a day off? If I want a day off, I take a day off. But on the flip side of that, like you say, if you don't have the work, you don't have the money. And there's all sorts of stress that comes with that as well. What about to people who feel like building relationships is tough? They feel like this industry is closed off to them. Maybe they've tried to reach out to people, build relationships, and they've had frosty responses. Have you got any kind of advice or confidence building for them?
I will tell you one thing with that. I can walk into a room and half the room hates me and half the room likes me. There's no in between. It has been like that since my childhood. I don't know. I just come into a room. I don't care. I don't care. If you don't like me, if I'm here, what I'm wearing, it doesn't bother me. And I'm unoffendable. I could care less. At the end of the day, your words aren't going to hurt. I think Americans actually, because I am Cuban, words don't mean the same as they do to Americans. Like my daughter's nickname is Gorda, which is fatso, but Gorda is a term of endearment. It is not an offensive word to us. And so, when people said that, so for me, if you are standing in a corner, get out from standing in that corner, get out from sitting in that chair, get out of your comfort zone and just be you in that room. And whoever doesn't like you, tough. Move on. And then I always say, if the door doesn't open, you did not knock hard enough.
Oh, I like that.
Knock harder.
That's true. That is very true, actually, because often when I talk to people and they say, I don't get this opportunity, I don't get to go on this podcast, and I go, did you ask? Did you push the door? Exactly that. Did you put? And they say, no, I'm waiting to be asked myself. I think, well, no one's going to ask you. You've got to be the master of your own destiny. And to your point about being in rooms where people don't like you, as well, I say to people, stop worrying about what people are thinking, because they're not paying your bills, right? So
Exactly.
they're not paying your bills. They're not your customers. So yes, be a good person. Yes, just you can only control the controllables. You can control your action. You know what your values are. You know what you stand for. If someone else doesn't like that, let them do that over there. But don't let it stop you, because otherwise they're taking money off your table and they're not paying your bills. So it's absolutely crazy to let them get in your head.
Exactly. And exactly. Don't let people get into your head, because this is an industry that is, I'll just say it with love, catty and gossipy. And, and it is what it is. But at the end of the day, you know what? Your clients love you. That's all you need. Because like you said, they're not paying your bills. The client is.
Yeah. Exactly. So we find ourselves here in 2026. As you look forward, where do you think our industry is heading? Do you see particular trends that are going on in catering? Do you see particular trends that are going on in marketing? Or do you feel like this year is just the same as any other year?
I think this year is going to be a difficult year. And I only say that because I said it back when 2020 happened, that once we got out of 2020, 2020, 2021, 2022, and 2023 were fixable years. 24 and 25 would show us what 26 and 27 would appear. And exactly what I said, that pebble has finally stopped trickling, and people are now more conscious on what they're going to spend. And let's just say luxury is a different world. So anything above $500,000 to me is luxury. Anything below it is a good budget. And I quoted that from a really good friend of mine, William P. Miller, who is a great planner. And he said that. And I thought, my God, that makes sense. And so at the end of the day, your normal folks, which we all live off of, no matter who you are and no matter what you do, we all have to implement those in there. And especially a caterer that has full-time employees, I don't have the luxury of picking and choosing. You know what I mean? I have a humongous payroll. So you walk in my door and your check clears, we're taking it. So I think that we have to be prepared, especially in these times of what could happen and financially. And I think that they're more cautious. And just look at the liquor industry right now in the United States. What I've been hearing is about 20 billion or 2 billion, something around those, to 2 to 20 billion in literally stuff that's sitting on the shelf that's not selling, because the trend is mocktails. And so you have this whole flux of no alcohol. Well, where do people really make their money? On alcohol. Your food is a very minimal. Your alcohol is the bigger seller. But mocktails have now become very expensive. They're just as expensive as a drink. So I think the trend is more mocktails. I think the trend is less people. We're seeing numbers in 100, 125, the 200 to 300. That's very minimal this year. It's really small. And even 50 and 60 people weddings. They're choosing to go less and actually pick bigger venues that look grander.
Yeah, it's interesting what you say about the mocktails as well and being the same price, because I'm running a conference this year and I was talking to them about I'm designing my own Becca cocktail. And then I asked them the price for the mocktail version. And they were like, it's basically the same, because actually it's the cost of everything else that's adding up, the labor, the glassware, everything, rather than the bit of alcohol in the bottom. And we're definitely seeing that trend here in the UK. The younger generation, we joke about it because people of my generation, we were the binge drinkers. We went out drinking. The next generation below me seem to be going to the gym and being vegan and being super healthy. And I think, but that does impact on our industry, because they're the people that are getting married and they're looking for different menu choices and they're looking for healthier alternatives. What about the dietary requirements? That's definitely a thing here in the UK, where that's getting trickier and trickier and trickier, and more people are popping up with all these different dietaries.
So one thing, I had a client come into my office and she was so literally crying. And I said, what's wrong? I thought I had done something wrong. She goes, I just got these invitations and this person is like 34 dietary restrictions. I said, okay, let's break it down. What table are you placing her at? She said, well, she's sitting at table 17. I said, so you put her next to the bathroom and the bar and you're giving her this much thought? That's an afterthought. That is somebody you either went to school with that you have to invite, your mailman who delivered mail when you were a child and you used the hug. I said, but at the end of the day, you are ruining your day over somebody else's dietary needs, which I'm not saying is not the right thing, but there is a simple little box on your invitation that says, RSVP, yes or no? But no, because you can't make somebody change everything on their menu. So what we have done gluten-free, dairy-free, peanut-free, vegan, and vegetarian. We created a superfood. And that superfood feeds those 5 major dietary restrictions. Now, if you're allergic to pineapple, my statement is we don't live in Hawaii. So why put that down? Why? I don't understand that. And maybe I'm old school. So when my husband's sister got married, her invitation came and I put, I'm allergic to humans. I need my own table. I just thought it was funny. And I'm not saying I'm gluten free. I have to eat gluten because my stomach blows up. I get really, really sick. But it is not anyone else's problem. It is mine. I know what I can eat. I know what I choose to eat. I chose, this, that, or the other. And I also don't eat fish. I went to an event once and they served us a 7-course fish dinner. Did I throw a fit? No, I just pushed it with my fork over and over again, pretending I was eating.
Well, that's what I teach my children to do. I'm like, now you're 9 and 12. You can't just go at someone else's food.
Exactly.
You've got to just either take it down and take some water with it, or just move it around your plate and then go, I'm full, and be polite, right? Because I think we all do have this me complex where everything has to be around us. I have to tell you quickly before we end this absolute dietary requirement fail that happened at an event I was speaking at once that made me laugh so much, because they did the dietaries and they ended up with 8 or 10 people who were vegetarian. And to make it easier for the caterers, they just put them all on one table. So it was like segregation of the vegetarians. So it was like the vegetarian table is over in the back corner. I was like, I don't think we should be doing this. I don't think we should be segregating the vegetarians for everyone else. But it did make us laugh, and they took it in good fun. It wasn't an event I was organizing, but I just thought, I've never seen anything like that where we just put everyone in one corner who doesn't eat meat.
And a simple solution to that is that if you actually have an expediter that comes out and you know where everybody's sitting, you have a captain in front of that table and they know that Mary is the vegetarian. You just put Mary's down first and then put everybody else's down. And that's a trick I teach, because we do a senator here every year and we feed 800 people in 23 minutes.
Wow.
Every year.
That's good staffing and good efficiency there for sure. Oh, I love it. Fausto, it's been so fun chatting to you. I always end my podcast with the same question. So I'm going to pose that to you now. And it's this: what's the one thing you personally wish you'd known sooner in your own business?
Boundaries are not rude. They're your financial oxygen.
Yeah, that's so true. What boundaries have you put in place? Any examples?
You cannot call me on my cell phone ever. So I have a burner phone for all my clients. And that number is just destroyed after that. And then my phone is mine, and all staff ends all work at 5:30, 6 o'clock, the latest. Don't take a call. I don't care if they're in California or here. Figure it out. That's not fair to you. Work-life balance is very important. And I go to the gym, and that hour and a half is mine. Don't ask me any questions about work.
I love that. Boundaries are so good. I took my work email off my phone nearly a year ago, and it was the best thing I've ever done.
Good for you.
I did it for 2 weeks, and a year later, it's still off, and it's made absolutely zero difference to my business, my income, everything. But what it has made a difference to is my family life, my children, because I'm not being distracted. And I always say it, you just see the email. Even if you don't read it, it's in your head. If you don't see it, you deal with it when it comes back, and they'll just have to wait. If they know that that's how you operate, that's how you operate. So yeah, love that. Boundaries are so, so important. Fausto, it's been so fun. If people want to find more about you and your businesses, where's the best places for them to find you hanging out?
You can find me personally on thefausto.com, or you can go to blueelephantcatering.com and then look for me there, and then, just chat me up.
Amazing. I'll make sure I put all of your links in the show notes. And if you're planning a trip to London anytime soon, let me know and we'll have to go for dinner.
Oh, thank you.
Such a great conversation with Fausto. I really enjoyed hearing all about his different catering stories, his history, and his tips for the industry. And I love that concept of temporary friends. I think that will resonate to so many of you, because we're constantly meeting new people, new clients, and it's hard to make that boundary and understand how we can give them value, but also realize they're just there for a season. I'll put the links to his book and all of those other things he mentioned in the show notes, and I'll see you all next time.